There are spots that look like they're fun and you could just step inside and play, but there are many other spots that look exactly like this. I'm given the honor to be a globetrotter, but obviously there's a lot of work I need to do before I can be able to use this ball and don the red, white, and blue. 95-year-old home located in the heart of downtown Bakersfield has escaped the fate of a wrecking ball after a construction company bid $30,000 to save it. Many cars have begun to caravan either behind a Caltrans snowplow or even caravanning themselves. I saw a diesel truck leading several people down just a few minutes ago. Traffic's still moving here. You can see the snow coming down. This is the alley where the victim was assaulted and held at gunpoint after the suspect grabbed her on Haley Street. I've spent about a minute inside of this trunk. It is hot, it is cramped, and you can just imagine what those three boys were feeling during that ride when they were all cramped in there together. Lawmakers are taking countermeasures in response to President Trump's announcement that he's pulling the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accord. And the community has had the center's back as they are in the process of putting in a chain link fence along this white line here in front of the building to keep people from accessing the new cooling systems. When I came out about 10 minutes ago, it was 78 degrees. You can already see well into the hundreds. So it just shows what somebody can be going through if they're in here for an hour. This water bottle, a rough representation of the status of the drought here in California. 42% have enough water to claim they are drought free. Yeah, this sign here marking 280 deaths since 1968. It welcomes you as you start your drive up the canyon. That 280 was just put up on Friday. Now barely 72 hours later, severely outdated after the river affectionately known as the Killer Kern has taken the lives of 3 this holiday weekend.
We've been really busy.
The worst fear for Kern County Search and Rescue became a harrowing reality.
Above the lake and below, all the way down through Hart Park, we've had several fatalities now and a number of rescues.
3 Memorial Day weekend deaths and around 20 people saved and nearly a dozen rescues sprinkled throughout the Kern River reinforce the message officials have been repeating.
I tell them to do their homework, to never get complacent, and really stick with a professional guide company. If you don't have any experience, then you probably don't have any business in the river right now.
Saturday, a 40-year-old man fell out of a boat while rafting in Tulare County. Sunday, the body of a 47-year-old woman was recovered near Hart Park a day after the boat carrying her and 5 others was swept away. Today, a man in his 40s was recovered near Lake Isabella after he was rafting Sunday evening.
The folks who entered the river in this case, they drastically underestimated the power of the river, and that's quite frankly what resulted in the ending that we have here today.
3 Memorial Day weekends ending the same way. The Killer Kern living up to its nickname. The search and rescue team left repeating the same message.
The one thing that I think we can all take away is that just once again, this is a reminder of how powerful the river is, and particularly this year. And many people have been stopping off the side of the road to take a look at this waterfall here as well. But many officials are saying just this weekend they were concerned, but over the whole summer they're concerned as well because a lot of that snow still hasn't melted on the mountains from those winter storms. Live from the mouth of the canyon, Ken Mashinchi, 23, ABC. I'll never forget that face, a phrase we've heard or possibly even used. But this reenactment of a common crime is meant to show you that you might forget that face just seconds after you saw it.
No! My purse!
Did you see him? Let's rewind, though in the real world, there is no replay. Here he comes. Don't blink. An eyewitness is startled and turns to look, but what could they actually see? You really only have a couple seconds, so how reliable is eyewitness identification?
In some circumstances, human vision can be most excellent. And in other instances where you have time constraint, movement, low lighting, emotional distress, fear, the ability of the person to make a valid eyewitness identification is severely compromised. Because what we think we can see is not necessarily what we can in fact see.
That might be scary to consider because many cases rely heavily on witnesses, victims, and what they saw or what they think they saw.
It isn't uncommon for witnesses sometimes to have seen everything and provide information that may be completely different from another witness who saw the exact same thing.
But what you see and what you remember seeing can be altered in the time it takes an officer to get to the scene.
Information, sometimes bad information, can be spread from one witness to another.
Suddenly you're telling an officer not only what you saw, but what another witness told you they saw.
shifting your memory of what actually happened.
The trouble with memory is it is not a static thing. Memories can be influenced by subsequent influencers. Every time the memory is tested, it can alter the memory.
Defense attorney Clayton Campbell has studied the science of eyewitness identification extensively because he has helped victims wrongfully ID'd.
We have the technology and the science to be about as certain about anything as we have ever been in the history of the world. So there's no excuse for us to continually follow these patterns of improper eyewitness identification procedures, ignoring the science and convicting the wrong people.
The practices Campbell is referring to are six-pack photo IDs and lineups, which he says are outdated and filled with bias. But Sergeant Ryan Croker, the Bakersfield Police Department, disagrees.
We try to put as many countermeasures in place to let people understand that we're not trying to be leading. We're not trying to get them to identify somebody who's not responsible, but just get an accurate depiction of what they remember.
All three admit that in the moment, it can be nearly impossible to focus on a person's face and decipher distinguishing information, especially if a weapon is involved.
One's survival depends upon whether or not their assailant is going to use the weapon. So that's more important than giving a description on whether or not the suspect had a mustache.
If you're in the middle of that situation, I do not expect you to think back to this news story and think, oh, what did that guy say I should do? You know, nobody expects you to be able to do that.
Though you aren't expected to remember it at the time, what you tell yourself you remember could make all the difference in the courtroom.
Limitations of human vision are not regularly challenged in court.
Do you think it should be?
I think it should be. If the victim or a witness believes in their heart that they're describing what they think they saw, they can be very, very convincing.
Very convincing, but possibly very wrong.
You don't want to acknowledge that because now you're admitting that you're still in danger.
Leading many to convince themselves that they'll never forget the face of the person who wronged them.
I believe that people who express with such confidence that they would never forget that face, I believe that they believe that. Okay, so I don't think they're lying. I think they're mistaken, though. And I think it's far more common than people let on.
Proving that even though you say it's a face you'll never forget, a variety of factors may cause you to forget it seconds after you saw it. And it's okay to admit that. And while the eye possesses capabilities a camera doesn't have, Campbell and Croker say taking video or snapping a picture on your smartphone can provide a second pair of eyes, ones that aren't subject to a changing memory. Just make sure you don't put yourself in more danger. In studio, Ken Mashinchi, back to you.